Hello, I'm Iris from Iris Impressions Art and welcome to this Q&A video. You all have been asking me loads of questions and I have got them all here. I have got my water ready, so let's get into it. I have divided these questions into different categories and we're going to get started with art, past, present and future. Jamie asks, I'd love to know a bit about how you began in your art journey. Did you study art at school? And Christina also asked, how did you get started with your art journey? So I started quite a long time ago, maybe in 2008, when I would keep a written diary and I was on LiveJournal, and there were these groups where people would kind of decorate their diaries and just kind of like color washes and stuff, but the main purpose was still to just write your diary. So I did that for a while, and I think that is when I discovered Susie Blue and Tam from Willowing, and I was really inspired by what they were doing. I think they were doing what would then already have been like art journaling, and I really wanted to do that and get more into that visual art making in a journal. And then I stopped and started quite a lot. Like I spent years collecting art supplies and not actually doing very much. I loved the idea of it. I would watch loads of videos, but then when it came time to actually do the art, I would freeze up. So that was kind of like the early days. And then around 2013, I think I took Lifebook that year. I'd taken it previous years and it just never really kind of worked for me. But then I think it was around 2013, I took Lifebook and I really got into it. And I really started making work that I was quite pleased with. I think something kind of changed at that point in time, where I was able to make art a little bit more regularly. I wouldn't go so long without making art in between. I wouldn't struggle so much. And I think it was partly because I was starting to think more about the why behind the art, the philosophy and that kind of thing. And at that point in time, I wrote quite a lot of blog articles as well. And I wrote about creativity and about the inner critic and that kind of thing. And I think combining art making with thinking a bit more about why I wasn't making art and why I would found it hard to make art, I think that really helped me to actually be able to make more art. So did I study at art school? No. I took art in high school. I really enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite lessons. I didn't love my teacher. He was very encouraging of people who could do art out of the box, and not of people like me. And so I definitely felt like I wasn't good enough, and like art school was something that somebody would do who would be like amazing at art just out of the box. I never really understood that you can work at becoming better at art. Nikki asks, when did you feel comfortable calling yourself an artist? That's such a good question. So I wrote in 2014, I wrote a blog article called Am I an Artist? And that asks questions around that subject. And so I would say that I have been calling myself an artist from about then, but it was definitely a struggle before. It was like something that I had to consciously say, yes, I'm going to call myself an artist now, even if deep down inside I feel like that doesn't apply to me. I'm going to just claim that title. And I think that is something that you have to do. There's a lot of things that we hang on to, that whole am I an artist? Can I call myself an artist? And a lot of it is like the kind of the negative out there voices, and also the negative in here voices of you can't call yourself an artist unless you sell your art. You can't call yourself an artist unless you are commercially successful. You can't call yourself an artist unless your art is exhibited in galleries, that kind of stuff. You can't call yourself an artist unless somebody else calls you an artist. But you know, I really think it's as simple as you call yourself an artist if you make art, and you make art when you're doing something creative that comes from within yourself. So there. But actually, let's answer the question really accurately. When did you feel comfortable calling yourself an artist? I don't know if I even feel comfortable with it now. I feel entitled to call myself an artist. I do call myself an artist and I am an artist, but do I feel really comfortable with it? Somebody asks me, hey Iris, hi, we've just met. What do you do? Do I say, hey, I'm an artist? I do these days, but I still feel uncomfortable about it, and I still feel like I somehow have to answer that question with, but this is what I do for money, like this other thing is what I do for money. I have to caveat it. So, Ali says, I would like to know if you have a plan for your future art journey. Like in 5 years, what would you like to have achieved? That is such a good question, Ali. I would like to make a lot more art, and I would like to make a lot more art on canvas, or out there on, like standalone pieces of art. I really want to develop that and my visual language and just create a body of work, and then I would really like to sell those pieces as well. Those would be probably my two main wishes. And I would also just like to keep making YouTube videos and creating kind of inspiring content that helps people make their own art. That is something that I feel quite passionate about. So yeah, making my own art, selling it, and making creative content. Those are the things that I want to do. I don't have a specific 5-year plan or goal. I used to do really quite meticulous kind of like goal planning, and then I realized that it was making me unhappy because I became so goal focused that I stopped having a journey. And I am kind of coming back to this whole journey thing, like what do I want to be doing on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, while still achieving some goals, but not just looking at the end, but also looking at the kind of journey. Nicole asks, what materials did you use when you started? So this is an interesting question because they were quite different from the materials that I use now. When I first started, I was very much, like I said earlier, I very much was buying art supplies and not doing much art. So I was influenced by what I saw other people use, and there was always like the next hottest thing. I spent a lot of money on art supplies in the early days on things that I never really ended up using very much, both because I didn't do that much art, but also because they might have not quite spoke to me. But until you're a bit more experienced, you don't really know what you like and what you don't like. And is it just because you've got a negative inner critic saying stuff that you don't like using this particular pencil or crayon or paint? Or is it because that just isn't your thing? So I had to go through a whole journey of trying out different art supplies and also just coming more into my own style before I could say, oh, this is the thing I like and this is what I don't like. But to answer the actual question, because I'm honestly talking about loads of stuff that isn't actually answering the question, I used to use Neocolor 2 a lot, because that is what the teachers that I was watching were using, and also Prismacolor pencils. So I know Tam was a big fan of Neocolor 2, and Susie Blue was a big fan of the Prismacolor pencils. The Neocolor 2, I used loads, never got on with them, and only more recently was I able to say to myself, I just don't like them. They just do not work for me. And I have relegated them to the kids' art supplies, and I still feel guilty about it. I've spent so much money on them, and I know that so many people love them so much, but I just feel like they don't work for me. And then the Prismacolors, I invested loads of in ones that had skin tones and stuff. So like the burnt umbers and cream and those kind of colors. That was back when I was still doing very kind of detailed, pretty faces and stuff. They didn't work for me either. But now more recently, I have brought Prismacolors back into my practice, but not at all about doing faces, but more with lots of colors and stuff. I also remember buying quite a lot of golden fluid acrylics in the beginning, which I really loved from the point of view of they were the first professional art supply that I was using, and my mind was blown because I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better than the crappy acrylic sets that I'd been using. However, I then didn't end up using them very much because I got all these colors that I then ended up not using. And there was also like kind of the feeling of like, oh my God, they're like tiny bottles, but so expensive. To be fair, over the years, I have used things, rejected them, and then come back to them. It's all about kind of getting more comfortable. It's almost like a language, learning about things. And then you need a certain amount of knowledge before you know fully whether something just doesn't work for you or whether you just need more skill in order to use it. Like, I think I have a much better relationship with acrylic paint now than I did back then. Nicole also asks, were you creative as a child already? When did you start to take your art seriously? Was I creative as a child? Yes, but I think I was quite scared. I think even back then I had a very critical inner voice, and it wasn't like art or creativity was a passion of mine. I think I wished to be really creative, but was never really able to kind of work through the negative voices. I think I always just felt too... like what I did wasn't what I had in my mind. Nobody really cheering me on, that kind of thing. I think that the ecosystem in which a child can be really creative and really into their creativity, it's quite a fine balance, and I don't think I had the required balance. So I did some creative things, paintings and drawings and stuff, but I was definitely not that child who was always painting or always drawing and was always going to be an artist. Definitely not. And when did I start to take my art seriously? I don't know. Probably only very recently, and it kind of goes in stages. So I started working on my art more seriously, I think, when I decided that I wanted to teach, because teaching is in a way taking yourself seriously and saying, I have something that I can pass on to other people and that is worth listening to because I can help them do something. So I think it was in 2014 or 2015 that I started teaching. I started teaching way before I was ready, but I'm really glad I did. I look back at my teaching now and I'm like, I cringe at the work that I was creating, but I don't cringe at the teaching I was doing, because I've always felt like I'm good at teaching, even if I look at the work and I'm like, oh, it's like, it's so beginnery. But in any case, I'm glad I did that. So I started taking things more seriously then, although I think the teaching was kind of an into taking my work more seriously, because like I said, I don't necessarily, if I felt like I was taking my work seriously, but I was taking the teaching seriously. And then through that, it's kind of like allowed me to walk along this path of taking myself more seriously as an artist as well. It's almost like you level up occasionally, where you kind of like, you're going along on the same level, and then all of a sudden something happens, or maybe not all of a sudden, but you go up a step. And I think that's happened with me recently when I've started trying to paint more consciously on canvas. I feel like I have started taking myself much more seriously as an artist, but I don't think I could have done it without everything that came before. Bettina asks, what artist had the most influence on your style? So I already mentioned Tam from Willowing and Susie Blue. They influenced me very much in the beginning when I was just learning, and when I was seeing their art, where I was like, oh my God, that's so nice. I really want to be able to do that too. So that was a big inspiration, and I still love their art. I follow them on Instagram, that kind of thing. In terms of other people that inspire me, God, this is a hard question to answer because it's so broad. There's a lot of different people who inspire me, and they inspire me for different reasons. So I follow some artists on Instagram who do very kind of colorful abstracts. So they inspire me from the point of view of color. And then there are other people who I follow who do very interesting and raw portraits, and they inspire me that way. And then I also follow some artists who do art that bears no relationship to my art, but I guess their art makes me feel something, and that's what inspires me. So let's think, what are a few artists that inspire me? Flying Pangolins on Instagram, her art is amazing. Mistel, really inspires me, both from a point of view of what she paints and also how she paints it, her intuitive process. I find that really inspiring. And also one other person who inspires me is Roxanne Coble by Bun. Her art's very different from what I do, but she inspires me from the point of view of that she shares her creative process through her vlogs and her Patreon, and I find that very inspiring and also very motivating. Oh, and there is one extra person who I need to mention, which is Sarah Trump. I think that it was one of her lessons that instigated me experimenting with a big eye, and I think that kind of just snowballed from there, and like kind of like took on its own life, and but that's probably like the genesis of the idea of the eyes in my pieces more recently. I just wanted to come back to that question of what would I have liked to have achieved in 5 years, because I realized I didn't actually mention my stickers or my shop, and I do feel like it's relevant. It's like, I love making my stickers, but I don't want to create some kind of sticker emporium. Like, I don't want to become a millionaire selling stickers. Not that I ever would, but you know what I mean. But I do have kind of like ideas in the back of my head. I want to do more stickers. I want to just keep doing that. I might want to do washi tape. I might want to do other merch, but kind of like as a thing that goes alongside the art that I'm making anyway. So it will always have to start with the art that I'm making anyway. I don't really see myself making art purely to turn into merch. That's not how I want to be working. But what comes into that as well is that, to me, I really want to be able to offer my art at an affordable price. And, I'd love to also be able to sell my works for lots of money, because that would be very validating and that would feel like a really nice exchange. But at the same time, I also think affordable art and owning a little piece of artists that you admire or that inspire you is really important to me. So that's why I want to kind of keep doing things like postcards and stickers and small works, as well as still pushing myself to start working bigger and more seriously. So yeah, that's kind of like, that's definitely something that I'm always thinking about, like how to make art accessible. Art being accessible and not being something that is like highbrow and only available to rich people is basically something that is really important to me. So I think I will leave it here for this section of the Q&A, art past, present and future, and I will see you in the next Q&A. Bye. Hello, I'm Hello, I'm super self-critical.